let's start with you, Stefan, since you spoke first. Your paper and your intervention were about the European Union standardization process and the use of standards in the EU internal market, and of course a little bit about the external dimension. In your view, is Europe now in a better place than it was 10, 20 years ago? I mean, are you optimistic about the future in this field, or are there reasons to be concerned?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's a question that has also been asked in our new communication in the package, where we need to see what will the future require from the standardization process. I think we heard different interventions yesterday, mainly also, about putting the act together. And I think that Europe has put its act together, because we have a system that is not over complex, that is dealing with the different big issues as transparency, inclusiveness, and so on. Because I think that it's going in a good direction. The question is now, is this sufficient on the level of economy, economic activity, this competitiveness for our European industry to benefit from it? Is that really stimulating, or is it more a brake on what is happening there? And there, I think the recent evolution and what we will see in the near future is evaluating whether speed is a problem. Involving more people in the discussion is, of course, is good. Comes to more stable agreements and better standards, but requires more time, much more time. Because I'm rather positive about what will happen in the future, but we don't have guarantees. We will need to see what are the missing elements in all this. Where is the system that is basically an old system? Where is that failing? What can we do without biasing too much the market and the trade mechanisms and so on, in order to put Europe in a good place, a good position in order to compete with other markets. So we will see what comes out. It's interesting, but we cannot look in our crystal ball. We don't see immediately where it will end up.
Yeah. Very good. Well, Bob, I mean, your paper and I would say a substantial part of your work focuses on transparency. And here it will be about transparency in the context of the standardization process. Can you tell us in a couple of minutes, I mean, more or less, where do you see the issue? Is the level of transparency you observe in the multilateral trading system optimal, suboptimal? And what are the main issues, and where do you see the areas for possible improvement?
All in a couple of minutes.
They can take a little bit more than a couple of minutes.
I think the level of transparency is suboptimal, but I think it's much better than one might fear that it is. So in this presentation here, I talk about how we can think about it in WTO. In the paper you're talking about, I've done a lot of work on where it works well, where there's improvements that could be made, where committees have been talking about how to make improvements, where in the late lamented Doha round negotiations, there were proposals that were left on the table that could have made the system work more efficiently. All of that said, the system in the WTO works not badly. We know a great deal about the trade policies and practices of members. There are some very good committee processes for people to learn more about each other's practices and raise questions and so on. So it's not bad. When we look elsewhere in the multilateral system, well, we heard today about efforts to improve transparency with respect to tax policy. Making progress, not so good. I've looked closely at trade in endangered species. That organization works well. I've looked closely at trade in electrical waste, computer products, your old iPhone. It's improving, it's not so good. Trade in conflict diamonds. You know, the blood diamonds. Kimberley process, ooh, huge effort needed on transparency there. So it varies a great deal in different aspects of the multilateral system, of where we have good transparency and where could do better. So.
What is your take from the interaction you have had this morning with the audience?
Well, I was very much surprised. It's the first time that I participated in an event as this one. And in Brussels, of course, you work in your offices, you are used to the normal discussions. You need to propose things to politicians, to the higher level, and come up with solutions that you invent basically yourself and need to check whether that is politically accepted. What we seldom do, we of course we order studies and we verify, but I saw here that a lot is ongoing on research, that the whole activity we are developing in Brussels in one or another office is measured on a much wider scale than only Europe. It is measured in the world, what is the impact on what happens there. And I think it's important to be involved there, to feel a little bit better what is ongoing on levels of research, to find out what is now the general knowledge at a global level about the European system. And there I was very much surprised what I heard yesterday, what I heard this morning, that a lot of things we are doing in Europe where there is a certain clarity, a certain definition made, what is not well communicated or sufficiently communicated to other audiences. I think it's very, very constructive.
I have two big disappointments. The first disappointment is that you're not doing a book. Because there were some amazing presentations. This is all, I thought you invited me because you thought I knew something about this. I go back on Tuesday morning, I'm talking to my graduate students about regulation. I have to change so many of my slides because it's so much more complicated than I thought it was. It's just, I learned a lot, very useful. It should be in a nice little plate, it doesn't have to be printed, but to have some of these presentations more accessible I think would be great. And I wish there had been more people. And the young people who are here, very interesting. There could have been more.